Hi guys, Tab here, hope you're all keeping well. Yes, it's video time again. Right, we are inside, I get that. Weather's awful outside, but it should be an interesting one, so do stay tuned. If you have subscribed to date, really do appreciate it. Thank you very much. The number is still slowly incrementing. Hope to keep the content coming. Should have a very exciting car coming up soon on the channel. Only a handful have ever been made, and probably 20 or 30. Nobody really knows how many, but very interesting, very exciting car. So do stay tuned, and hopefully we'll have that with you very soon, all going well. But the topic for this video is going to be V8s. And I want to answer the question, is now a good time to get a V8 car? So, I should caveat this by saying this is targeted at the UK audience. Now, believe it or not, most of my viewing audience, according to the analytics, you don't know how much I want to believe them, but according to the analytics, most of my audience are in America, which is kind of interesting, I guess. And in America, you guys use V8s to get around the golf course and around the car park in malls and inside malls. V8s are everywhere in America, and kind of loads of people have them. Appreciate you are getting more economical now and gas prices are on the way up, but V8s in the US are very much commonplace. In the UK, on the other hand, not so much, because petrol, as we call it over here, is very, very expensive. V8 ownership for any petrol head is almost a rite of passage. It's something that a lot of my friends have done and really enjoyed. And I think if you're into cars, you got to own a V something at some point, whether it's a V6, a V8, a V10, V whatever, V12, W16. How many can you get any higher? I don't think you can, but V8 ownership is fun. I mean, they sound amazing, plenty of power, thirsty but great fun. I've owned 4 V8s in my time. The first of which was that lovely M3, that E92. They are great cars. It's quite a lightweight V8, so you really got to work it. Not a lot of torque, but really fantastic. The second of which was not straight after that, but at some point in the future, was a W204 C63. The coupe, that's 6.2 litre, about 450 brake. Really not a lot of power for an engine at 6.2 litres. I mean, the F1 team would probably frown on you for that, but big lazy V8 with a lot of torque, a lot of power, and not overly stressed. So those cars just go on forever. Following that ownership experience, it was the W205, the C63 S Coupe, which was again a great car, different kind of V8, twin turbo, loads of torque, but the just sound was amazing. And then after that was the McLaren, the 570S, also V8 twin turbo, but a slightly different V8 in terms of cross-plane versus flat plane, and I'll talk about what they are in a bit in this video. Also in this video, I want to have a look at what might potentially be a good V8 to buy, V8 to buy in the UK from a fun or investment perspective, because there are some absolute bargains out there at the moment in V8 land. I think a lot of people who might have older V8s are just thinking, I can't afford to run this anymore. I just want to get rid of it. I'm not spending all this money on petrol, car tax. It's just proving a nightmare. And I guess the sentiment is slowly shifting away from, those kind of cars. Now, you might get to a situation where if you say you drive a big V8 or a V12 at some point, people are going to look down upon you and go, oh, you big gas-guzzling nasty, polluting the environment and hurting the polar bears. So, these are kind of things you've got to consider. But I think while you can, while they're still available, now really is the time. If you're thinking at all about getting a V8 or just something you're toying with the idea of, honestly, now is gonna be the time to move forward with that. So let's look at why I think that. So first of which is the state of gas prices at the moment, petrol prices. They're the highest they've ever been in the UK, and honestly, I can't see it receding a lot anytime soon, if at all. My big concern is this could well be a new normal for petrol prices, especially as EVs really do shift up a gear in terms of people buying them. I think 1 in 5 cars is now a full EV. I think I read that somewhere. Don't quote me, but you can believe it, right? You really can believe it. So we've got this situation where petrol prices are kind of at this new normal. So running a V8 is expensive. We've also got a situation where car tax bans are on the up, getting higher and higher and higher. I think it's 650 quid for the highest level of car tax in the UK. First time car tax band is, I think, what, 2.5, 3 grand, something thereabouts if you're buying it brand new. So it's a lot every year to pay. So you've really got to think about that in terms of ownership, right? I think that's one main reason why now is going to be the time. The other area to think here, the other area you need to think about is manufacturers and what is available. So obviously there's options too. You can buy new or you can buy used. But a lot of manufacturers now are actively steering away from larger engine sizes. For example, you know, the new Ferrari, right? The 296 GTB, that's a V6. The Artura is a V6. The new Merc C63 isn't a V anything. I think it's going to be an inline 4 with a hybrid system attached. So manufacturers aren't putting any money or R&D into new V8 technology. The cars that we've got now are the best it's ever going to get. There are some older bargains to be had as well, and I'll cover a few of those, what I think might be a good buy towards the end of this video. The other area of concern potentially here is where you can drive these cars, V8s. So in London, it's getting harder and harder. If you've got an older V8 or an older polluting car, obviously the ULEZ seems to be growing. And I think at some point soon, the ULEZ is going to be out into the sea. At least it certainly feels that way. So the ULEZ, for those of you who don't know, is where you have to pay if your car doesn't meet certain emissions requirements, pay a levy to get into the City of London. So that is definitely something to consider. And I just think in terms of getting in one now, really, you're probably going to be able to get hold of some bargains potentially as people are saying, oh, you know what, I just don't want this V8 anymore. I'm going to get rid of it. So those are definitely things to think about. I can guarantee you one thing, provided you get the right car, you will love a V8. If you're coming from something like an inline 4 or a V6, something like that, to a big meaty V8, then you're going to love it. You're going to absolutely enjoy it because they are great fun. The sound, fantastic. So what do? Well, it depends on your budget. I mean, there's loads of V8s out there. So if you're buying new and you've got money to throw around, where you can get hold of a nice McLaren or a Ferrari, something along those lines, or maybe an AMG, top of the range, and that's going to cost a lot, but it's going to give you that V8. I think one of the best bang for buck V8s you can buy at the moment from new is actually going to be the Mustang GT 5-litre V8. So you get that V8 experience. They sound great, quickish cars. I think 4.5 to 60, and I think they look cool. And of course, you can get them right and drive, and you can pick one up new if you don't mind a wait for 50k, £50,000. Which, when you look at the price of a Golf R, it seems pretty darn good, right? And they're pretty well put together, these cars. Great drive, and I think you'll enjoy it, and it will definitely scratch that V8 itch. So that's one to consider if you want to buy new, okay, and you know, not too expensive. So used cars that you might want to look at. Well, you could go dirt cheap. You could go, for example, for a really old E-Class, maybe a W210 or something like that. You could probably pick one of those up for £3,000, maybe an E430. But beware, because it's probably going to cost you, I think, £150,000 a year to maintain it. So you have to look at the history of the car and take someone that knows cars along with you to check these out. But in terms of, I'm not going to do a buyer's guide, but you know, that's probably the cheapest V8 bang for buck you can get right now, I reckon, something along those lines. There's some other strange V8s out there, like the Volvo V8. There's a V8 Volvo out there. There's not very many of those in the UK, but they are indeed, they do exist. So you want to buy maybe a newer Merc, maybe a newer E63, you know, sort of 20, 30k-ish budget. That might get you something pretty decent. But those Merc V8s are very well put together. very resilient, and will definitely go on and on and on. So that could be a very cost-effective way to get your V8. But they're not super duper drivers cars, okay? So they are lazy sedans, saloons, coupes, estates, whatever, wagons, whatever you want to call them. But they're fun, but they're kind of still a bit lazy. So what do you do then if you want something that's a bit more focused? Well, that E92 M3, that is a great car. That coupe with the carbon roof, still great value for money. You can pick those up, a good one of those up now for 20,000 for a really, really good one. And I think that is one that will be a future investment. The last NA V8 M series car, the M3, that was ever made. So that's going to definitely be a good investment going forward. So definitely put that on your list as well. In terms of other V8s, Audis, so the RS4s and RS6s, they are pretty good buys as well. A lot of power, especially if you go for that older RS6 V8 twin turbo. Insane amounts of power, maybe not so amazing in the looks department. So that's definitely another one to consider. And of course, if you do have loads of money to throw around, you've probably already got some form of V8 supercar anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But in terms of used, there is definitely a lot out there, as I've highlighted. Another one out there could be the Vauxhall, the VXR, the V8 version of those. They are dirt cheap at the moment, and again, it's going to scratch that V8 itch. I think based loosely on the Holden, the HSV type format, but they are definitely good cars to get if you want to scratch that V8 itch. So, if you're thinking V8s, there's two types you can choose. There's cross-plane and flat-plane. Now, the majority of cars, certainly the ones sold in the UK, are cross-plane V8s. So think your Audis, your Mercs, BMWs, that kind of thing, right? They are going to be cross-plane. So cross-plane and flat-plane cranks. What do I mean by that? Well, it's simply how the crank works and the plane of the crank, and it determines the firing order of the cylinders. Now, cross-plane tend to be better balanced, so they're smoother, and that's why you see them in your luxury saloons. They tend to be under square cylinders, so the one where the bore is longer than the stroke is the stroke is longer than the bore is wide. Effectively, what that means is higher torque. They don't rev as high, but they've got a lot of that instant pickup. The other option is flat plane. You don't tend to get flat plane cranks in your mass-produced cars. You tend to get those in the special supercars, so your Ferraris, your McLarens, etc. So why do you have those? Well, they tend to lend themselves to lighter, more lightweight cars that you want to rev higher, that are more race bred, because they don't have as much torque. So they don't lend themselves quite as well to big, heavy cars. Flat plane, think light, nimble. Cross plane, think heavy, thunderous. Now, that V8 experience, I think, when people talk about V8, they think about noise, that thunderous V8 noise. Especially that Merc AMG noise, which is absolutely phenomenal. Really lovely, lovely noise. Just great. Just, that hammer thunder sound. They're all cross planes. So that is probably what you're going to want to be looking at, because that, I think probably in your head, when you think V8, that's what you're thinking. The flat plane cranks tend to make a more buzzy sound, and they sound great when they're being spanked at a higher rev range, but you can't do that when you're just rocking around town. And honestly, low down the rev range in town, they just sound a bit rattly. That's the reality. It's just the way flat plane cranks are. Tongue twister. It's the nature of the beast. So that buzzy versus that thundering sound. So really do consider that when you're looking at your V8s and what kind of experience you want. So I think to summarize, there's a few thought nuggets there, but I guess really if you're thinking about V8, you really want to be thinking about it now, and you want to be acting upon getting a V8 now, because honestly, the cards are marked for V8s, and being able to not just be able to own them, you could always own one, it could just sit around, but being able to run them realistically, I kind of can't help but feel that big engine cars are slowly being forced off the road. I really do get that feeling. Somehow or other, the government is looking for ways and means to kind of get these big, hungry cars off the road so they can meet their targets, their emissions targets. So that's something to consider. Also, we've seen evidence in London, unfortunately. I don't know why people do this. It's just a horrible thing to do. But you have big SUVs and Chelsea tractors that are getting vandalised or getting their tyres let down. It's fine to protest against climate change, but do it in a way that's constructive, right? Not destructive. I don't know, just think about it a bit more. So that is something to consider. I just can't help but feel like the time for big engine cars is marked. And the other thing as well is you want to drive a V8 fast. You want to go for a bit of a drive around your country roads, obviously safely, but utilise the car to the best of its ability. Now I'm seeing more and more speed limit reductions, which is great in the name of safety, but not so good if you want to have a bit of safe fun. So responsible, appropriate speed in the right places, right, without breaking any speed limits, acceleration, etc. But seeing more average speed cameras, more reduction in speed limits, more speed traps, and then of course speed limit devices fitted to cars, which you can override them, but that's on the horizon as well. So for the petrol head and he who likes to have fun, the time is not looking great at the moment, unfortunately. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of share a few thoughts there. And if you're thinking about a V anything, I guess, move now, act now. Now is the time to get out there and have your fun. So that is it. Massively appreciated. Do sub, do like, etc. I'll catch you soon and see you on the next one. Bye for now.